Okay, welcome back. Part 3. Bioshock. I'm a little late today, and I can only stream for a couple of hours. I had a bit of an emergency last night, so I couldn't stream. But we're back in it, so let's get on. I've got a feeling we're going to finish this. I mean, it seems a bit quick, if you ask me, but I've just got this feeling we're going to finish it today. Maybe not, maybe not. Who knows? Okay, let me just make sure my mic is on. Yeah. Okay. Good. Alright. So. Is this where we're going? Okay. Let's go. Right, here we go.
Watch yourself. Ryan's stirring. We best keep to our knitting.
Okay.
It's time to either run the table or go home empty. Ryan's got the genetic key to Rapture. We get that from him and we get out of this hellhole. We don't, then you and I are ghosts.
Rapture.
Now would you kindly head to Ryan's office and kill the son of a bitch? It's time to finish this.
Rapture, November the 5th, 1946. One man's vision, mankind's salvation.
I see Cohen's lost his touch, if you knew him when he used to believe in the work.
Welcome to the Circus of Value!
He rots in that Neverland, waiting for someone to come and tell him he still got it. I suppose that's why he let you live.
Who said that?
I know your type!
Mr. Caldwell? Yes? Who said that?
Who sent you?
Surely we can't finish this yet. We've still not discovered any other places on the elevators, have we?
You can taste it, can't you? Andrew Ryan.
Oh shit, that ran.
Only making it worse for yourself! Hey!
I don't know where he ran to.
Well, that's
We've not used any of the grenades yet. Oh, there's 3 sisters on this level.
observe all of his commandments.
A worm looks up and sees the face of God. But look around. It's a regular convention of worms in here. They all had mothers, fathers, people who loved them. They got married, fucked their wives. What makes you think you're any different? I haven't chosen the spot for you on the wall yet. Let me know if you have a preference.
I had to go jungle style with that filthy ape for 3 weeks, but he finally spilled the beans on how to get to Andrew Ryan. Generate sympathetic overload in harmonic core number 3. That's simple. Now all I gotta do is figure out what the hell a sympathetic overload is, and for that matter, a harmonic core number 3. Piece of cake for an electrical engineer. Too bad I designed ladies' shoes. Gonna go see the grease monkeys left alive in heat loss monitoring. See what I can shake out of their trees.
Like all parasites who ever tried to walk in stolen shoes. I'd explain the science that renders what you're trying to do impossible, but that would be like playing Mozart for a tree frog.
Come on.
They sense it, didn't they? This isn't over. You don't care. Howard!
Coming back to life, even now, can't you get the rest returning from her life? The shops reopening, schools humming the thoughts of young minds. My city will live. My city will thrive. Let that come. We'll use your tombstone for paving tiles.
Ignore the lies of Atlas and his parasites. Rapture is on the rise.
Okay.
Why have you forsaken me?
Give out to me your will! More than
I shall lay my vengeance upon
Those terrible things, and done worse myself.
Thank you.
For reminding me that the light of the world has not yet been snuffed out. I am sending a little one to help you on your way.
Okay. So we need to keep our eyes out for a little kid.
But he is strong. Even while he wasn't, he still sees everything.
Do you guys have any idea there's a war on? If you don't follow proper maintenance of those big daddies, they burn through those R-34s like them Eve's apple berries go through penicillin. I've got Atlas's goons hitting us non-stop and 2 dead mechanics just this week. We need to control costs. If I wanted to deal with amateurs, I would have stayed on dry land.
I never killed a man, let alone a mate. But this is what things come to. I don't know if killing Mr. Ryan will stop the war, but I know it won't stop while that man breathes.
I'll do what you say.
I love Mr. Ryan.
But I love Ratchet. If I have to kill one to save the other.
Oh, I see. I get it. Booby trap. Can't see it. I thought I'd just looted him then.
Come back! Come back! Come back here!
Imagine the will it took to create a place like this.
Christ, I'm out of all.
What have you built? Nothing. You can only loot and break. You're not a man. You're just a termite at her side.
Welcome to the Circus of Value. Come back when you get some money, buddy. Tell your friends the circus of
Yeah, I can hear a little bit. Come on, you're up, I'll show you.
We tricked you, monster!
Boom, fucking arm, that's it. Who's down here?
Hush, hush! Come on, then!
You saved me.
You're welcome. Alright. So we got
Over there, yeah. We can't Ryan take care of this crap himself. Because Mr. Ryan's got more important things to do than to enforce loyalty in the ranks. Say hello to Fontaine, you backstabbing son of a bitch.
Alrighty. Sorry, I was just seeing why my screen was buffering. Well, I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is. If I fail again, I'm not doing it. Alright. This is bullshit. Fucking bullshit. Yeah, you'll come. Fuck you. One more time, that's it. Why do games make these horrible? But I mean, like horrible minigames, right? Zero stars, okay. Who's been made Bioshock? I don't think I've got over.
I didn't recognize the tourist that come into the shop today. Stacked like Sally and dressed to the nines. She's played her cards pretty close to the vest, but you ain't gotta be no college job to see that she's into some bad china. She was asking about magnetic locks and some such. I played it coy, but she took wise. After she showed me round her backyard, I gave her directions to Keyboard's tool shop. Rapture's gone to hell, but sometimes the great chain still cuts you a break.
I never killed a man, let alone a magnet. But this is what things come to.
Right, I think we've got one more little sister.
I don't know if killing Mr. Ryan will stop the war, but I know it won't stop while that man breathes.
They do spawn
I
in the
love
same place.
Mr. Ryan.
I mean, it's not
But I love Ratchet. If I have to kill one,
it all depends if
Before the final rat
little
has eaten
sister
the last
available.
gram of you, Rapture will have returned. I will lead a parade. Who was that, they'll say, as they point to the sad shape hanging on my wall. Who was that?
Okay, we'll make Damn it! It's in a lead down, so we don't want to he was obviously on his way down there to pick up the Lexus. What kind of icon, yeah? So I need some help quite soon. Been doing alright for help actually, to be fair. It's only nearly set.
Brian's spies are dragging the young woman off right now. I'm certain she's one of Brian's spies, sent to fill me out. I think she is. If I'm wrong, an innocent girl will end up on Ryan's bloody trophy wall. If I'm right, well, I best be right. The device is almost finished. I can't get soft now, I can't.
Is there blood in the streets? Of course. Have some chosen to destroy themselves with careless splicing? Undeniable. But I will make no proclamations. I will dictate no laws. The great chain moves slowly, but with wisdom. It is our impatience that invites in the parasite of big government. And once you've invited it in, it will never stop feeding on the body of the city.
Damn it. I don't think. Well. Yeah, let's go. Let's get out of here quick.
some kind of fruit tree spinning like a top. And it was pouring juice down Ryan's throat, choking the bastard. But it wasn't a tree, really. When I looked closer, it was the core control. The gizmo that feeds the maglocks on Ryan's gate. You can't cut off the power. It comes right from the volcanic vents. Ryan always gets his juice. But I suppose you could drown the son of a bitch in it.
More bang for your research, but with damage research, carry your analysis further than ever before thought possible.
Okay. The basic casing is ready. I've got one charge of nitroglycerin in my office. That will serve as the catalyst. Now, I need 4 R34 lead shield wire stubs to pass the circuit. Then a half can of ionic...
Okay, we'll watch this.
From the moment you boot up Bioshock, you can feel the story grab hold of you. A plane crashes at sea, a mysterious lighthouse, a sprawling city beneath the ocean. Hooking the player from the first touch without overwhelming him with convoluted RPG mechanics was key to the success of the game and the skillful ramping up of Bioshock's legendary gameplay. Bioshock has an amazing opening sequence that I can't imagine the game without it, with the plane and sort of the crash. But I understand that didn't come online until like the very end of development. Sean, is that true?
We had a couple of really depressing playtests.
That's cool.
We had built all these systems. We thought we were doing a good job of like giving basically people a playground to play with and things to do. And when we had a playtest, we didn't realize how bad of a job we were doing in exposing those systems to the player, because we were so in these systems and in our own heads, we had no idea that we just weren't facing them towards the player at all. So after that playtest, we took a long, cold look at what we were doing and realized that we had to introduce we were confident enough in the systems that they were going to be fun and meaningful to the player, but we really had to think about how we were going to introduce these systems to the player, and in such a way that they understand why the systems were there. Like, you can't ship a README file with the game and expect people to read it. Like, it has to be part of the experience. So the challenge is, how do you introduce people to these systems, but do it in such a way that it fits within the narrative? So we had to integrate all of these things into the story cleanly so that the player felt like it was one smooth experience. And I think the zap 'em and whack 'em thing was one of those.
And the 1-2 punch.
Yeah, the 1-2 punch that came out of that.
The plane sequence at the beginning, I heard a story that like a programmer put that together in like a day or two, and it was a very last minute thing, right?
It was. So we had done a focus test, and we had it was one of the most depressing experiences of my life, because we were very close to being finished, and it was basically giving people what essentially became the demo, and people played it, and it was in Boston, and we were sort of behind these glass windows, all these sort of Boston guys, like, this is a wicked piece of shit. They hated it, and they were making fun of it, and they were saying, it's like watching some guys and dolls beating each other up, and it's the stupidest thing they've ever seen. And we thought we were in pretty good shape at that point. And I remember the focus test guy was like sort of like a doctor giving me the bad news.
Right.
Sorry, Ken, you better get your affairs in order.
Right.
And we all came into work the next day, and we were like, what are we going to do? And we were all pretty depressed. But I think we started talking. And as we talked, we started thinking about, what are they saying to us? What are these people saying to us? We think there's something there. How are they missing it? And we decided that maybe they didn't understand who they were and who their role as a character, who their role in the world was, because the game at that point started with you in the ocean, floating in the ocean after the plane crash. And
the Crash still was in the fiction, it just wouldn't show
you
it.
just didn't see it, so you didn't have the voiceover saying, my parents always said I was going to do great things or whatever that. They didn't show the plane crash. We didn't establish a time period.
Yeah.
Because, the plane is critical to establishing. You're smoking a cigarette. It's very 1960s looking. All that stuff was established. It wasn't established. So we decided we had no time and no money and so we sort of came up with a script. I wrote some lines, a line, I think. Nate, one of our artists, recorded the line. Steven and Sean and those guys got to work on building this very simple sequence, which was simple, relatively simple sequence. And then the plane crash actually happens over the Bioshock logo we already had. But we wrote a radio play behind that with, altitude of the crash. And that, I think, set the emotional, and the people screaming in terror on the plane crash, that set the emotional tenor much better and explained who the player was. And all of a sudden, we released, then I think the next real encounter we had was people playing the demo, public encounter, and all of a sudden it was a very different experience.
No, I remember even back in the day, I think we did a thing on TV where you kind of talked about it, and it was like that night, and I remember that night, like people on the forums were just like going nuts. And even though the game had a lot of press attention, when people finally got to play it and go through that sequence, I just remember there was this mass sort of excitement around it, and then the game shipped only a few weeks after that, right, or a month after that?
A week later, or a few days later.
It's amazing, like now, to hear that, literally a month before the game came out, the plane sequence came online or something. I mean, it was that late. Right?
We still had to go through certification and all that.
Yeah, but it's within,
It wasn't far. It wasn't far. It was really last minute, and it was one of those things where you really shouldn't be putting in content that late. Yeah. But we felt we were so close to having something good that we just rolled the dice on it, and we worked really hard on it. We worked really hard. I remember how much time I spent on just that recorded of altitude. I can still hear the different version of that in my head because we spent so much time on that stuff, and these guys were working on getting the animations right and the
scene was shot in engine, but we decided to pre-render it so that we had to do less QA on it.
Right.
It wasn't going to be some weird streaming error or crash error. Wow. It was just we're just going to show the video. Yeah.
And it's interesting because once you start in the ocean, we had this experience of testing a lot with the water effects and how beautiful Steven's water effects were. People didn't realize they were out of a cutscene at that point, and so they would just sit there and stare, and then they pick up the controller. They pick up the controller, and all of a sudden they realize they're controlling things. But as Sean said, that part of the plane is not actually interactive. It was done in the engine, but we just filmed it.
Now, as people were playing through the game and you were testing it, I'm sure there was debate about, when would you introduce these plasmids, what would the ramp be? Did that change at all, sort of as you got towards the end of development, about we're going to give people the gun at this point, or it's we're going to trigger these plasmids at this point? How did that work?
So we moved guns around. For instance, there was a big debate about, originally you found a gun in the lighthouse, a pistol in the lighthouse.
Oh,
at the very
right
beginning.
there, yeah.
And because it's a shooter, right? What the hell? And we had a lot of debates about it, and I feel that it was important that we didn't do that, because the fact that you sort of go through a lot of the experience without having the distraction of a gun is important to getting you immersed in the world. Because when you have all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? But you don't have the hammer, so you just sort of had to take in the world and have that feeling of fear. And I know when you saw that splicer bounding around on the ceiling, that you couldn't do anything about it, and that had even though that's
those are those moments, right? I remember when I played Unreal for the first time, where it's you're trapped and there's a monster and you can't do it, and the lights go out. It's that's the moment with the splicer where you're I want to do something but I can't, and that evokes an emotion.
Yeah, we saw this in part 1.
I remember we kept, moving where the machine gun appeared around and where various plasmids appeared around. It was a real. It's a real fine-tuning process.
Yeah, and it gave us an opportunity, especially with the shotgun, to really present the weapons, put some space between them.
It's a moment when you finally.
Yeah, I think
we get the shotgun Paul sequence.
Paul Hellquist was he put the sequence together for the when you see the shotgun laying in the pool of light. Every game developer knows what that means. The minute you pick that thing up, something's going to happen. But it was still a very effective way.
It's like a Resident Evil moment.
Oh, look, I've been waiting for this thing. I'm going to pick it up, and now you have an immediate opportunity to use it. But at the same time, we're trying to ramp up the tension level by having the splicers kind of on the outside of the light, so you can't really see them, and then coming in one at a time and attacking you.
Yeah. And we had very little, actually very few tools to really control how those splicers acted. So how they were set up and how the environment was lit was really important. You know,
Well, there's even other things like when you get the TK plasmid, I don't think we had a lot of physical space and opportunity and time to really present that. So we came up with the narrative that, you know, it was the doctor's office and he used TK to practice tennis. And we had the turret in there that threw tennis balls at you. So if you wanted to, you could catch the tennis balls and throw them, and you could knock things down. I think it revealed pickups that you could then, you know, pull to yourself with TK. But we're always trying to think of like little backstories that we could do. It doesn't have to be as involved as the shotgun ambush. Sometimes it's just, oh, let's take a grenade turret and turn it into a tennis ball turret.
Because we want to, yeah, like, and because I remember like the impulse was, you know, I've been to dentist office, and there's always some like weird aspect of the dentist personality they always want to get through their office, you know. They always have to have their hobby featured in some way, and so we saw an opportunity there to both feature this, he's a tennis nut, and teach TK at the same time.
And the
Jill, that's the pretty Betty of the mix. Should send the core into compensation mode, push power down the line and trigger the circuit breaker on Ryan's gate. Well, that's the theory. It'll either work like a charm, or blow up half of Rapture.
I thought we were still
Nothing
in
ventured.
Thing.
What a balmy dream. Some kind of fruit tree spinning like a top. And it was pouring juice down Ryan's throat, choking the bastard. But it wasn't a tree, really. When I looked closer, it was the core control. The gizmo that feeds the maglocks on Ryan's gate. You can't cut off the power. It comes right from the volcanic vents. Ryan always gets his juice. But I suppose you could drown the son of a bitch in it.
I can't construct it because I haven't got the items. Oh, this is right. Not now linked. And we're still looking for lots of stuff. Let's see if we can find anything on this floor. Alright. I thought you could see her on the map, I don't. So we've got to find them on Big Daddy.
His light shineth even down here in the murk.
I don't know why I thought there was somebody here.
From the light down here. We were wrong.
Okay, never mind. At least we checked. We've been worse if we'd had to.
I observed all his commandments. My warrant I'm sorry, brother. I'll do what you said. I'll do. What is the problem now?
Electric gel.
We have turned away from your light. Father, why have you forsaken me?
It's a sick way, man. Come on. Is there a way around there? Go.
We thought we could hide from the light down here. We were wrong.
tracked the problem that was blocking the tubes here, and you'll never believe where I ended up. It's a damn farmer's market clear on the other end of Rapture. I fixed it right up and installed some new gaskets. What a mess. Anyway, the code is 0512 if you ever need to get back in there to do maintenance.
Oh, he's just told us the
Gus!
code.
Heard that.
Bienvenido a la Modanito. Muchas gracias, señor.
Hang on, let him get one of them around.
Stay close, Mr. Bob.
There she
I can smell something. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
So, I don't think he needed. No, I think they have to get like a bodyguard.
Time for a nap, sweet angel.
We have turned away from your light. I'm sorry, Father. I'll do what you say. I'll do what you say. We thought we could hide from the light down here. What? You think you can hide? Your rivers turn to blood. Go make his heart. You live I'm worried for you, Father. It's what you like.
Is that it there? How'd you get down? Why not? There it is. Right. The last thing we need is this. Which I don't think it's...
A man builds a city at the bottom of the sea. That's a mark. Another man happens to be on a plane that crash lands on the same city in the middle of the ocean. Why, that sounds more like a miracle.
Yeah, it does. You sound unbelievable.
We have turned away from your light. I'm sorry, Father. I'll do what you say. Hold it! Heretic!
He got it! You think you're not fighting nothing, you are! I'm bleeding all over the place!
Stay out.
Does it look like it's a real bomb? It better.
We freed all the little sisters and we got the
You got to put it on the core past geothermal control. And we'll see if these needle noses knew what the hell they were talking about.
Don't get it.
Bienvenido a la Modanito. No
Father, why have you forsaken me?
Looks like the ocean's got an itch to retake this corner of Rapture. This happened right after the start of the war. Read about it in the papers. Head on in. I'll see what I can dig up to help. I'm no engineer, but if I read these plans right, you can channel that magma flow using the redirect valve. It'll boil off that water right quick, and you'll be able to reach the core. But Ryan's sure to take notice. Might want to set up a perimeter just to be certain.
Will these creatures kill you? Even I don't know. As you drag me closer to the abyss, you pull yourself right along with me. I offer you quick death, Parasite. If nothing holds you up, So far away from your family, from your friends, from everything you ever loved. But for some reason, you like it here. You feel something. Can't quite put your finger on. Think about it for a second. And maybe... nostalgia. What did Atlas offer you? A piece of my plundered city? Mark my words, your only reward will be a knife in the back. Defenses fall. You'll not defeat me. My strength is not in steel and fire, but in my intellect and will. You hear me, Albert? Andrew Ryan offers you nothing but ashes. Matters to me, and all that matters to you is you. It is the nature of things. Sometimes you find truth. There is indeed a season for all things. And now that I see you, flesh to flesh and blood to blood, I know I cannot raise my hand against you. But know this, you are my greatest disappointment. Does your master hear me? Atlas, you can kill me, but you will never have my city. My strength is not in steel and fire. That is what the parasites will never understand. A season for all things. A time to live and a time to die. A time to build and a time to destroy!
What is he throwing at me?
Well now, my child, there is one final thing to discuss.
What? Ryan set the core to self-destruct. This is different than what you did. He's got a mind to take down the whole damn city. Get in there and whack the jump for the whole joint blows!
Did you talk to your puppy? She's very pretty.
Thank you, Papa Sushan.
Break her neck for me.
What?
Break that sweet puppy's neck. No, please. Break that puppy's neck. Would you kindly? No. No.
Crikey.
Very good.
That's fucking awful.
Advanced deployment, Lot 111, Dr. Suchon, client Fontaine Futuristics. Baby is now
That's awful.
a year old, weighs 58 pounds, and possesses gross musculature of a fit 19-year-old. The results are disappointing, but within expected tolerances.
And I'll just say, well, we may as well make a quick one just in case.
The assassin has overcome my final defense, and now he's come to murder me. In the end, what separates a man from a slave? Money? Power? No. A man chooses. A slave obeys. You think you have memories. A farm. A family. An airplane. A crash. And then this place. Was there really a family? Did that airplane crash? Or was it hijacked? Forced down by something less than a man, something bred to sleepwalk through life until they are activated by a simple phrase spoken by their kindly master. Was a man sent to kill, or a slave? A man chooses. A slave obeys. Come in. Stop, would you kindly? Would you kindly? Powerful phrase. Familiar phrase.
Would you kindly? Would you kindly get this? Would you kindly find that? Would you kindly find that? Would you kindly find? Would you kindly get this? Would you kindly head to Ryan's office and kill the son of a bitch?
Sit, would you kindly? Stand, would you kindly? Run! Stop! Turn. A man chooses. A slave obeys. Kill! A man chooses! A slave obeys! Obey!
Hurry now! Grab Ryan's genetic key! Now would you kindly put it in that goddamn machine?
on, we'll watch it, why not?
Rapture is overflowing with memorable locations and set pieces. In developing a world that feels organic, lived in, and functional, Irrational managed to create a space that feels perfectly suited to the story and action that takes place in it, which begs a question: did the plot shape the location, or did the plot fit squarely into a world that was already established? Let's talk about some of the areas in Rapture, because it's an amazing place, but also it feels like there's certain areas that are very well designed, that they have, a very certain aesthetic, and the characters in there, it all kind of comes together. Ken, do you have a part of Rapture that resonates the most with you still to this day?
I think the opening is always going to be the most important to me because it's we spent a lot of time there, and it was all for me as a challenge as a narrative guy is sort of how do we set up a very complex series of events and a very complex notion and all this, Andrew, with so much to tell, Big Daddies and Little Sisters and Andrew Ryan and the time period and do that all without cutscenes. And especially, I think, the descent to Rapture when you get in the bathysphere, getting that right, getting everything right down to the bathysphere, cresting the hill and seeing the city for the first time. Remember how much we worked on the timing of that, just getting that.
And it took us forever to figure out that we should just put the slide projector covering the window. Again, in hindsight, it seems like such an obvious choice, but we were really trying to figure out, how are we going to tell this story of Ryan and then reveal so you can see the city beyond the hill.
And also we didn't have to show the whole transition going down the bottom of the ocean because the whole screen was covered.
Spoiler alert.
I think that's the part that will always be near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, for me it was Kashmir. Yeah. That was one of the first...
The restaurant at the beginning.
Yeah, the restaurant at the beginning, because it was really the first art box that we created that was Rapture. We created spaces before that weren't really hitting the Art Deco look. Scott Sinclair had just started.
Oh no, I was impressed
built that,
by the art style. I love it.
The Atlas with the
Absolutely
world on his shoulders.
And I really want one of those bunny masks.
And Mauricio had done some concept art for us of that space. And once we started putting everything together and getting it into Engine, and actually walking around it and seeing those giant windows off to the side that just showed the seascape and really drove home the fact that you were underwater. It was the first time really all the elements started to come together.
And we had built a bunch of stuff, and we actually stepped back and said, we have to just get one room right before we go any further, because we weren't getting it right. And so Mauricio did that concept drawing. Yep. We worked really hard on that statue, and that statue, I think, was the first object we really built in the game that was a Bioshock. So we just stayed in that room for a month until we got it right.
And I think the original concept actually had a tram running through it. So it was even more complicated, and that was one of those things where we had to keep pulling back to really focus on what the bare essence of that room was.
Were there parts of Rapture that you never were able to realize that you sort of still miss? The zoo. People talk about Frolic, right?
That I was excited about. Not everybody was excited about the zoo, but I don't know why I was excited about the zoo, because it would have been a nightmare. We had another area that was prior to Arcadia that was more of a straight up agriculture, forest type of area.
Before we had the bathyspheres, we had a whole sort of subway transport system in Rapture, which we spent a lot of time thinking about, and then just realized that these little submersibles would be a much more realistic and much better solution.
And you were going to be able to move between locations in that subway system?
Yeah, much like the bathyspheres, but they were much more integrated throughout the space, and we really want to support them. And we just realized it was not really relevant to what we were doing.
Were there certain locations or areas where you knew a certain narrative point, needed to happen? Like you look at, the reveal of sort of Atlas's true motivations. Was that we've got to do it this level because it fits the story? Or was it more that you sort of you had the game laid out in a certain order and you just layered the story on top of it?
I think the big one I can think of is that you encounter Ryan in his sort of that he would live in an area of industry.
Okay.
So he lives in this very industrial area because that's where he would feel most comfortable. And that we wanted his office, his lair, to sort of be not in some residential zone, but where he wants to wake up and smell the grease fires and and the machines and the smoke. That's in his lifeblood. Industry is his lifeblood.
But it also had to be very theatrical. Like if you look at it now, it doesn't look like an office. You kind of know it's an office because the story is telling you that.
Set, yeah.
And we had some old technology that was laying around in the game that would control environment settings. So old system that we had would let you do high pressure, low pressure, medium pressure. And those would affect lighting and other like post-process things in the world. And that was a system that was cut, but because the code was in, we were always trying to figure out ways to use it. And one of the ways that we used it was in the Andrew Ryan sequence, because we didn't have a lot of narrative storytelling tools. We were basically switching the atmosphere to get all the lighting changes. So whenever a light changes in that scene, we're telling the game that the atmosphere is changing. So, and then the preset atmospheres come in and shine the spotlights on them or bring up the house lights when we need them to.
Because very, very early on, you could change the pressure in the areas, and that would change how explosions worked and all this stuff like that. And we just couldn't figure out how to make it gettable for the player. We couldn't make it feedback, but we still had all those. That moved a lot of levers in the game, so we still had the system. So we used it for the sort of theatrical cues of the, very theatrical cues of Ryan appearing, the lights going down where you are, and the lights coming up where he is, because the engine didn't have those tools by default.
The assassin has overcome my final defense, and now he's come to murder me. In the end, what separates a man from a slave? Money? Power? No. A man chooses. A slave obeys.
And there was a great sense of sort of artistic progression as you went through the game too, and that each level had its own sort of voice. Was that something that a lot of games as they move further in development, it's like, oh, we sort of ran out of time. We it's like we're just going to sort of repeat this and change the color palette. It felt like, for the team, it was very defined from early on that you wanted each sort of level, which they were levels back in the day, to feel distinct.
Yeah, we had sort of experimented with that back on System Shock 2, back when every Doom level looked pretty much like every other Doom level, because they were just working on the same set of assets. We decided with our very rudimentary tools in System Shock 2 that we would progress with color, and every deck would feel different from a color standpoint, even though most of that was lighting, or textures, nothing really more. But we had the tools to actually, sort of theme levels. I think a lot of this goes back to, I think my first memory was actually from when I was 1 year old at the Montreal World Expo.
Remember when you were 1?
Well, I remember being at something at this World's Fair, which I didn't realize, I think was in 1967, when I was 1 year old, a little over 1 year old. Wow. And I was on a theme park ride they had and I remember being at this thing where a big bat flies out of this sort of thing and comes up. I don't know why I was a 1 year old was on this ride. I'm not sure, sort of a haunted housey kind of ride. And I remember loving it. And I think that stuck with me. So the notion of sort of theme parky themes and settings, and Disney World does a great job with this. You can go to Disney World, they theme areas. So themed areas are something that always resonated with me. And Bioshock sort of always has had this notion of feeling of theme in different areas, much more than the real world has. Like you walk from building to building, most of them you can't really tell them apart. You walk from walk from a floor of an office building to another floor. It's not going to look any different, but we always felt that was really important.
And there's also, if you look at SWAT 4, saw some early experiments with this, especially like the serial killer's house level in SWAT 4, which is probably one of the most dense levels that we ship, but you were trying to tell a specific story with that. And going straight into Bioshock and using the same exact engine that we're using, and we were very comfortable at that point with how the engine worked and how to art up these rooms, gave us a leg up when we sat down and really thought about what stories are we specifically trying to tell. And one of my favorite anecdotes from this time period is with Sander Cohen. I think it was Nate Wells and Stephen Alexander sat down one night, and they came up with a backstory for every dead body that you find in that space, and then they told that story with the props that they could. Even if it was just like, this guy crawled 3 feet and then shot himself in the head because he was sad about something, they put those marks in, maybe put a picture next to the guy, and then he shot himself. So they really did their homework and tried to add the backstory for everything that you're going to find in that space.
I've got Atlas's goons hitting us non-stop and 2 dead mechanics just this week. We need to control costs. If I wanted to deal with amateurs, I would have stayed on dry land.
Ah, okay. Shit, I think we are near the end.
Nice work by all. It's time to end this little masquerade. There ain't no Atlas kid. Never was. Selling my line of work takes on a variety of aliases. Hell, once I was even a Chinaman for 6 months. But you've been a sport, so I guess I owe you a little honesty. The name's Frank
I gotta say, I had a lot of business partners in my life, but you, of course, the fact that you were genetically conditioned to bark like a cocker spaniel when I said, would you kindly, might have had something to do with it, but still, you know, as soon as that machine finishes processing the genetic key you just fished off Ryan, I'm gonna run Rapture tits to toes. You got a pal. You know what they say. Never mix business with friendship. Thanks for everything, kid. Don't forget to say hi to Ryan for me.
Come with me!
I'm coming. Was I supposed to jump or something? Am I dead? You see, helping means you get a bit of backup. And we got the little sisters to help us. Because we saved them all on every level. So they'll all be happy. Although I think after this cutscene, it'll be done for the stream today.
Welcome back, child. Welcome to the city where you were born. You are angry at Fontaine, yes? Now you know the truth. You are his tool, brought back to Rapture to save him. You have saved many of my little ones. I owe you a debt. While you sleep, I undo some of Fontaine's mental conditioning. His control is no longer complete, but he can still pull some very unpleasant strings. We made your mind with many locks and keys. Fontaine has most of those keys, but not all. Suchong designed your mind, taught Fontaine to control you. You might find answers in Suchong's flat in Mercury Suites.
Okay. Well, okay, so it's not going to let me save just yet, so we'll wait until I've saved.
Who's he? He's the one who saved me.
Aw, you little cuties. What are you doing?
Come with me!
Okay. She's adorable.
There he is. The one who will save us all.
I like him.
Oh,
Who's
I like
he?
him
He's here to help us.
too. It's Sergeant Ted. Okay, I can't get to that door. Oh, thank you. Oh, sorry. Oh. Okay. So, thank you for tuning in and watching. If you're watching this later instead of live, hey, I hope you enjoyed. I even made it this far. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're watching this also on YouTube later, please consider maybe commenting or leaving a like. That's much appreciated. And I shall see you guys tomorrow for another stream, which will be considerably longer than today's. But anyway, have a good day, and I will see you.